It always comes to this. More nice shit. Morning guys, back into another Tattoo Progress update here today. Where I last left off, I had showed off all the new red fill and some more black shading on my chest. It was done with, I think, 4 different reds, I believe. There's pomegranate, really red, nebula red, and red velvet. And some of that was going over purple, some was going over blue, old black, on black, and then some of the prior red from the last session. I didn't really go too much in detail into the last one about exactly what we used for the whole operation, but some of it had already been pre-redded again with, I believe we used Nebula Red and Flaming Pink the last time. So this time we went over some of that red with darker and brighter reds, and then the purple and the blue and all that shit that was in there, and then the black that was put over top of that. It's easy to say that my chest is one of the more tattooed places on my body. I don't know if it's one of the most. That could be my sleeves or my neck. My head is up there. There's a lot of spots on my torso that are up there, but my chest has been layered thoroughly, even in just the last few years, but certainly one of the more layered areas of my body, one way or the other. And so I really wanted to make it more distinct and more defined, and especially, like, yes, the spider eyes do showcase fairly well with the yellow outline, but I found that it was looking a little too far in the background. I wanted it to be a bit more punched out. I don't want it to invalidate the foreground, so or take focus away from the spider eyes. So it was important to keep that yellow outline around the spider eyes. So, in Terry's words, working in between all of that shit on my chest it's a little bit like painting without painter's tape, because there's just so much shit to work around. He did all of that with an 11 mag on its side, and it's just like, you don't want to nick anything, and you can say what you want about my work, whether you like it or not. It's incredibly detailed, and to some extent maybe too detailed for its own good, but it is incredibly detailed, and that makes revisions like that more complicated than just running a fucking 49 mag straight in there. It's like Terry was working on this abstract blackwork project the other day. It's kind of like a scratchy black type thing. Kind of looks like an oil spill. Hard to explain exactly, but I'm sure you catch my drift if you like blackwork. And it's so much more complicated than just doing a full blackwork sleeve, where you could just run the biggest mag you've got, essentially the biggest mag you can handle. And still get good results with, even if that means a 127 in some people's hands. You can do you could have done that whole arm in the time it took him to do. I'd say he outlined it and packed a third of it in about 5 or 6 hours. So it was a long session on the girl getting it, but if they had just been doing Blackout, it would have been even faster, or she would have been out of here with a full sleeve probably. So, not that we really like doing that here anyway. We have some people inquire at our shop for full blackout arms, and I don't think that they heal the best. And I know there are people who can do them, but unless you're that guy and unless you're doing them all the time, I don't really recommend it. And personally, I don't recommend it anyway unless you're traveling. And this girl in particular was not traveling. She's native to the city, so in any ideal circumstance, it would be, at least a few passes for the first pass of a blackout. I think doing a second pass in a session is completely different, just because you don't have to do as much trauma to saturate things. So it usually moves so much quicker. There's much less damage done. For example, my first back blackout that we did was way more trauma than my second pass, because the first pass you really have to work that black in, whereas the second pass you're just skimming the surface and kind of making things darker and smoother. You just move so much quicker and do so much less damage, you know. It's a lot less healing too, for the client, and you lose a lot less blood and all this shit, so it's a better session overall. So for second passes, maybe we would consider that, but generally speaking, we do Blackout in chunks. And even my legs, for example, which healed amazingly well on between 1 and 2 passes, Blackout, and that's with cover-ups everywhere. I had my legs fully covered first. Rick did those in sections, and we were able to work on it continuously week after week until we were done, and it didn't take that long. But because we did smaller chunks, the whole thing was healing really, really well, and didn't need so much of a second pass as it did kind of blending and shit like that. And so we made quick progress, and not needing a lot of backtracking saved a lot of time in the long run. Whereas if you do too much and it heals like shit, well, perhaps you'll need more than a second pass. Maybe you'll need 3. And then when you're packing black over color, that's sometimes just going to be the case anyway, which my whole upper body was quite a bit more colorful than my lower body. Now, not going to meander on that too long. I guess I should show off how this healed. I should say I'm really happy with how it healed, actually. This is exactly what I was talking about in the last video, about how it was going to tone down a bit. It was obviously very, very bright red and shiny, and you can see the fade into the purple, blue, black, and red that we did there prior now. Whereas before, when it was fresh, you couldn't really see that fade quite as much. So looks a lot better healed than fresh, even on one pass. And I don't expect this to fade back much, if at all. Big help is the fact that this is already color. So we're not really doing color on black here. We're doing color on color. And there was already red in the balance as well. So even if you were to say, why didn't you do it that way the first time over the black? Well, this color background that we had already established actually helped the red go in. It was not a hindrance. It is already pre-lightened. So I find that lighter colors are taking the black, or the new color, easier than straight black was, which is interesting because I've had a hard time with coloring white over top of, or color over top of white on black. But it all just depends on what you're trying to do, really. So even if you could say something like, oh, why didn't you start that way? Even if I wanted it to be this color, it probably would have taken several passes from straight black to do it. So we got there quite a bit faster than we would have having started that way with the established color base that we did. So generally for me, I don't find colors change too much after they heal, like most people say they will, especially not once you've had a few layers of color already. More or less what you see is what you get once it's peeled. And then there will be the gradual fading that happens with all tattoos. And I say that because sometimes people will say, oh, yeah, right, all tattoos fade, Remy. When I say things like that, I mean that they don't fade more than other tattoos. So, for example, this red was done, again, close to a year ago, and has it faded? It's still as red as it was. This is, fuck, these have been done for close to 4 years. So, yeah, maybe they'll fade, but they won't fade distinctly more than any other color tattoo. That's all I'm ever trying to say. And by the way, this is holding up better than quite a few other people that would have had a red tattoo 4 years ago over negative space. Part of that is my lifestyle. I don't go out in the sun a shit ton. I don't avoid it. But I'm not out there baking my tattoos on the beach. So people who do that will, you know, their tattoos will fade much quicker than mine will, no matter how many layers mine are. And that's just the way it is. I always say the sun is a more powerful laser than any laser we command in this shop or any other. So if you want to fade your tattoos, go hang out in the sun a lot. If you don't do that, then they should age fairly well. So, for example, I had a fucking chest piece done by Rick way back, over 16 years ago, 17 years ago, something like that. And that fucker was not aging at all. And that's partly health, partly my skin tone, and partly the fact that I don't go out in the sun a shit ton. I'm a sort of a natural vampire for all kinds of reasons. And none of those have anything to do with my teeth, which ironically play into that. So with all that out of the way, I have another session with Terry coming up in 2 days. We're working Wednesday this week. We're going to be finishing the remaining work on my head. Finally, the back of the head rose is going again for the second pass of color on white and black on black. And while we're there, we'll also be doing these roses again. They've only been done one time in color as well. So, and these were white and black on black for several years. And then we changed them to be kind of the same palette. But as you can see, they're not as bright as the roses on my head or neck or arm for that matter. So they've got to get brought up to code as well. And then I had another session with Rick, but it wasn't a great session today, and I knew it wasn't going to be, right away. I can tell. There are certain ways I can tell when I'm working with Rick. The color palette is still good, and by the way, this healed up great. So I expect what was done will heal well, but Rick was making all kinds of noises and, dragging his feet when he got here today. So I don't mind having an early day anyway. I've got 3 sessions next week. I know I have a session with Rick on this fucking thing every week anyway. And as long as the results are what I want them to be, I don't really care if he pisses around and does 35 minutes or an hour every now and then. I feel like I was due one of those anyway. Rick's been putting in good sessions on me. And with a guy like him, you gotta expect that every now and then. He felt bad for what it was worth, but I think he was legitimately not feeling well. He's lived a rough life, and I remember I said his age one time, and people were like, wow, the way you talk about him, he seems way older. I was like, well, fuck, age isn't... You don't age on a clock, guys. Like, you age based on how you live. For example, I'm aging better than he is, but I don't drink my fucking face off, and I haven't done hard drugs, and I haven't been in a million motorcycle accidents, and all this shit, that adds up. You take care of your body, it will take care of you. And people are always amazed when they hear how old I am. And usually people expect him to be older. So we don't age mentally or physically around the clock. For example, I was a lot older mentally, younger than most people. So having, real life problems early will age you mentally, emotionally. Getting into a fucking motorcycle accident a few times and getting, knocked out bouncing at a strip club and drinking yourself near to death quite often will have profound physical effects on you. So, I mean, we've lived different lives. Sometimes I say all the time, and I say this quite often to him even, I'd love a vacation in your life, but I wouldn't want to live there. That complete freedom and reckless chaos is, it's a powerful aphrodisiac to someone who lives in a life of complete order and structure and responsibility like myself. And what's funny to me is the amount of shit-talking trolls that come in to my social media feed, and they'll talk things like, oh, well, I bet he never has a job, or, oh, can't find work. Dude, you're never going to find a more responsible fucking human being than me. I've been the guy holding it together in sobriety my whole life. The only thing I dabble in is a little mushroom every now and then, just to feel a little looser. My life is incredibly structured and responsible, and everyone that I work with and live around is chaotic as fuck, and I am balance in all of these people's lives. That's part of why I do what I do. I've always been in that position in every job position I've held, and in every relationship I've been in. That's just how that works. Order attracts chaos and vice versa. But the idea that tattoos make you chaotic or something like that, you can't get this amount of work this often and not be incredibly disciplined. So it's just a stupid stereotype. I don't know where the fuck it originates from or what bonehead came up with this, but it doesn't track with reality. Maybe if you see someone on the street with the worst tattoos ever, but quality should count for something. Anyway, with all that said, I will be talking to you guys here in a couple days. All right, take care.